Race relations in America. Let's turn to a different kind of scandal and bring in Ken Vogel, chief investigative reporter at Politico, Sabrina Schaeffer, who's executive director of the Independent Women's Forum, and Lily Gil Valletta, an Hispanic market expert and co-founder of XL Alliance. Lily, Mark Sanford of South Carolina is the latest episode of a scandal-tarred American politician. He resigned his governorship, as you know, 4 years ago after turning the phrase hiking the Appalachian Trail into a sexual euphemism. Today he's poised to win his party's nomination for his old congressional seat. How did he do it? How do they all do it?
You know, just as brands do it when they come out of a scandal. Good PR and good brand management. Eventually, if you let the dust settle and come back around admitting to the fault, I guess we're willing to accept it and forgive it.
But that seems unusual to me, because in Europe, we're much less forgiving. I think it's one of the great characteristics of this nation that Americans are willing to forgive.
Absolutely, and if we look back at the history with Bill Clinton, which is a very recent loud story in the media, he left office with a 65% approval rating. So obviously, beyond his lapse and marital affair, his performance when it came to peace and prosperity and the economy of the nation outweighed the issue that we had behind closed doors.
Of course, you're referring there to Monica Lewinsky. Sabrina, one of the things that may have helped Mr. Sanford is how quickly he confessed. He leaves on his trip June 18th. It's quickly discovered he's missing. 6 days later, not only is there a scandal, but also a public confession. How big a factor do you think that was?
Well, I think it's actually very important, and it's a theme that he's coming back to. Actually, if you watch some of the political ads that are running right now in South Carolina, you'll see that he looks, squarely in the camera, and he says, we all make mistakes, and he's clearly asking for some forgiveness from the voters of South Carolina. And I suspect that they are looking beyond this. As Liliana suggested, I think people do see extramarital affairs as a sin, if you will, but they also are extremely forgiving, and they've come to sort of expect them of their lawmakers, sadly enough.
Yeah, gosh, that's rather depressing. Yeah. Ken, how does his image problem redound on a GOP with its own image crisis? Because, here's a man who literally left office, didn't tell anyone where he'd gone. He was actually invested with the responsibilities that came with the position he held, and he was cheating on his wife. I mean, how does that work for the GOP at the moment?
Well, first of all, I think he handled it initially rather poorly, because there was some cover-up with his people saying that he was on the Appalachian Trail, and then, of course, he quickly came around and confessed. I do agree with Sabrina that his ads have been very effective, and that he almost made his request for forgiveness sort of the centerpiece of his rollout. But now it does put the GOP in a tough position, and it's something where they would probably prefer to have a candidate who is less well-known, more of a blank slate, who would easily carry this district. Now it looks like, though, he's going to win the Republican primary. He could be in a tough spot against Elizabeth Colbert, the sister of the Comedy Central comedian, who's running okay in polls in a very heavily Republican district, and might force Republicans to come to Mark Sanford's defense, national Republicans, and that would put them in a tough position.
Exactly, it would. Now, Sabrina, last week, Sanford wanted to make the point that no one knew his opponent's skeletons. Why, for instance, had his opponent missed so many meetings as a council member and so on? The attack backfired horribly. Let me play you a portion of it. Here it comes.
Okay.
I suspect that she would criticize him for not attending 20% of the council meetings, or 30% in some years.
Unfortunately, my wife has twice had cancer, and my absence is because I was home taking care of her largely, doing what I should have been. People knew where I was. I did my job just the same. I still fulfilled my role.
Sabrina, I was home taking care of her, largely doing what I should have been. People knew where I was. You can use faith and grace as a shield, but it's difficult to use as a sword, isn't it?
Well, yeah, look, I think that this was an uncomfortable moment for everyone who was watching, but if gaffes were something that kept people out of political office, then certainly Joe Biden would not be the vice president today. I think the bigger thing is that Sanford is running on his record as a businessman, as a champion for educational freedom, as a self-limiting, self-term limited politician, and I think those are things that are appealing, even though he has these personal flaws, which I don't think any of us on the panel today would disagree with.
Yeah, indeed. Lily, Sanford has two big 30-second videos appearing in the last month. There was his video talking about the God of second chances, which was great, and one more recently featuring a sweet elderly lady who once taught Sanford and who now speaks glowingly of him. And there they're watching her. Does that kind of an ad, you were talking about PR, work? When you've cheated on your wife, you deploy an elderly lady to defend your greatness and goodness?
See, what he's doing is emphasizing or trying to draw on the principles that are important to the values of the party. So one thing is a conservative, faith-based base that is going to remember of the God of second chances, and also having a testimonial. So it goes back almost to basic marketing, of reminding them of the things that are so important to the core of the values of the party and replaying them in a way that he humanizes them through his story.
Okay, Ken, final question to you. What do you think of recent polls that show this to be a very tight race? Where would you hedge your bets at the moment?
I mean, it's a very Republican district, Martin, and certainly almost any other Republican nominee, any other Republican were they to win the nomination today, would probably just crush any Democratic nominee. But Sanford is a deeply, deeply flawed candidate, and he's done a really wonderful job of sort of reinventing himself and making a weakness into a strength. But that strength only goes so far, and in this district, which is heavily evangelical, I think that there are going to be some voters who either hold that against them or just sit on their hands and do not come out to vote for him, who would have voted for any other Republican candidate.
Sabrina.
I just wanted to add to what Ken's saying, that I think that the poll, I would not be surprised, I should say, if the poll numbers are slightly inflated. I think that I don't want to go as far as saying there's a Bradley effect going on here, but I do think, considering the composition of the voters in South Carolina, I'd be surprised if there's quite so much enthusiasm for a man who does have this sordid past.
Okay, Sabrina Schaefer, Ken Vogel and Lily Gil Valletta, thank you all. Coming up.